36 or 31 or something. I want to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of information that we'd like to cover. And before I get started, I want to introduce our two guests. Sherry Stewart, who is the executive director of Oregon Main Street in Salem. And this is Joy Sears, and I'm sorry, I don't know your title.
Restoration specialist.
Restoration specialist, and her office is also in Salem in the Parks and Rec department. So what we want to do today is give you some information, education about what Oregon Main Street is all about, or what our Main Street program, Lakeview Community Partnership, and about the possibility of what might be possible for historic preservation in Lakeview, and possibly looking at a historic district and all that. It's all really up to the community as to whether or not something like that could happen. But before we even figure out what we want to do, we have to have some information. So these people have kindly offered their time to come and give us information. They wanted me to talk a little bit about how the Lakeview Community Partnership got started and a little bit about where we are and what the structure is. And we have, if you go online and you Google Oregon Main Street, there will be links that you can go to and lots of good information that explains the program really well. But I can tell you what's happening here is that we have formed a nonprofit organization. It is we do have our 501c3 IRS designation, and we have a board of directors. We have 7 members. Rob Nichols is our president. Our vice president is Ann Logan. I'm the secretary treasurer. And then we have some members at large, and that would be Karen Bunch, John Kogar, Ken Kessner, and Ray Sims. Did I get everybody with me? And we started talking about this last March. We had Sherry come, and she did a community-wide meeting to sort of see what, take the temperature and see what the interest was. And there was good interest, so we decided to pursue it further. And we started our process to become a nonprofit this summer, and on September 11th, we were granted our 501c3 status by the IRS. So what we have done at this point is put together our Main Street committees, which are organization, and that board of directors takes care of the organizational duties that come under that, and they're mostly administrative, as you can imagine, and volunteer management and that sort of thing. And then we have a design committee they are looking at the buildings downtown and anything that you can think of that would be design that would be related to our community. And we have economic vitality. John Kogar is the chair of the design committee. The economic vitality committee I'm the chair of, and what we're in the process of doing, or what we have been doing, is looking at what is it that the community wants to see in terms of businesses or the kinds of goods and services that they would like to see in our community, and then letting our existing businesses know that information so that they can adjust their inventory or they can add or whatever. And then we also in the process of doing working with the Energy Trust and Pacific Power and LCRI to bring in those folks to start looking at how we can help the downtown buildings be more energy efficient. And we'll be having our first meeting about that sometime in mid-March. The other committee is headed up by Ann Logan, and that is Promotion Committee, and that committee is the one that brought you Festival of Trees at Christmas time, and they're working on some other things and hoping to partner with the Chamber of Commerce with Irish Days to do, put a float in the parade and do some other things, and also with the Occupy East Street Fair that will be happening this summer. And that committee has a lot of other really, really good ideas, and I see some of the committee members. Teresa Decker is one in the back, and they've been very active and are very have a lot of excitement about it. So those are our active, moving on the ground committees. We always need help. We always are looking for people to help out with that. the board is engaging in a lot of planning and to make sure that we have the resources to move forward. And late this afternoon and this evening, Sherry's going to help us with some updating on our planning so that we are really solid in what we're doing on the way forward. So anything anybody wants to add that's on the board? So I want to get out of the way so that these folks can give you information and you'll have time for questions.
Great, I guess that's us then, Ginger.
It is.
Well, we'd like to know who you all are. I see some familiar faces from working with you last year, so it's great to see some of you again, but some of you I haven't met. So if we could just go around the room and Joy, I don't think has met anyone. So for her benefit and for mine, if we could just go around and if you could say your connection to downtown, whether you're a business owner or a property owner, an interested resident, whatever it is, your connection you feel to downtown.
Sarah Fitzgerald, and I guess a property owner with Mary Wilcox, and then the Bagley building at local, which means nothing to you guys probably. But I do know Ben, so.
We did a walking tour for about a little over an hour this afternoon, for about an hour and a half, so.
I'll stand up. I'm Mary Bradbury, for these who don't know me, and this was Sally, because you don't know her. And we have a building on the corner, and we're property owners, and will continue to be business owners.
Larry Utley, Bagley Utley Corporation.
Larry's building's on the National Register, and so is the Wilcox building that belongs to Mary.
And Sally.
And Sally.
Don Lastly, a property owner.
Which one's your?
The building over here is the Torn Pond.
Oh, we didn't notice.
We're checking with Kelly, and we're partners with Don in that building.
Gerald Stewart, and I represent the old Lake County Hardware Building, Lakeview Ministries, and the Chandler House. It's on the historic village.
Debbie Thornton, and I'm married to Russ, who's has Thornton's drugstore that's been there forever.
The blue fronted building.
Yeah.
Okay. We checked that one out.
We're glad.
We want to give you guys some design assistance.
Wait a minute, that's why we're here.
And I'm Susan Samples. We have the Algid Theater building, and we're property owners and business owners in Burger Queen.
I'm Irene Berry. Bill and I own the building where the Goodwill store is. Used to be Western Wear. I'm Bev Hills. I live in the house that Dr. Daly built for Sybil Harper, who was a freed slave midwife, and she delivered a lot of the Lake County pioneers in my home.
Oh, interesting. Very nice.
Julie Keano, Director of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce, and we are housed across the street from the Post and King in the old, what is it?
That's the joke.
No, it's
Alstrom
Alstrom Building, thank you, it's the Alstrom Building. On the corner
That's
of
a great
Second.
building.
You look at it every day. I do, I stare right at it, and I was like, I need to tell people this, and I'm like, yeah. Did you guys know that?
John and Hannah Kremen, property owners.
Teresa Decker, I'm a concerned citizen, I guess. And I'm on the design committee. So.
Thanks for that.
Jimmy Hall, reporter for the Examiner.
Ray Sims, Town of Lakeview.
I'm Megan Mess, and this is my husband Buddy, and we recently just purchased the fitness center, and we're going to be moving it into the old True Value building on the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Karen Bunch, and I'm with the Design Committee in LCP. Loving it.
I'm John Koger. I have the Hereford building on the corner over here and the old Roundup building, B Street.
Massively large building. Fantastic building, yeah.
Way too big to take care of.
Well, thank you all for being here. I am super excited about working with Lakeview on your downtown revitalization efforts. I've been working with Main Street communities for 26 years, and I first came through town a few years ago, and I thought, this would be a perfect Main Street town. The type of program that we work with, this is the type of community that we really like to dig in and really help shine the diamond in the rough, so to speak. And I think you have tremendous potential here. You have great history, you have great building stock, and you have great people, and that's really the ingredients for a successful revitalization effort. Through Oregon Main Street, the communities that are participating, we have a tier system. We have affiliate level communities. We have about 45 that are participating. They're interested, but they're not really ready to move forward. Then we have what we call our Main Street track. You guys are at the entry level. At that, we call it the Exploring Downtown. We have 3 levels: exploring, transforming, and performing. And total in our Main Street track, we have another about 40 towns participating in those various levels. But at the Exploring Downtown, we really help you build that organizational structure to sustain a long-term revitalization effort. When I started my Main Street career, I started in a small town of about 6,000 in the state of Washington. And that program is still going and vibrant today. Working in partnership with our chamber and our countywide economic development, that community has sustained itself and really transformed that downtown district. So it's a model that I'm very familiar with from the local level, as well as now working with communities from my perspective from the state level, and it's one I truly believe in, and one that I really see a lot of potential for your community. So we're so excited that the timing was right last year to really get this off the ground. And I am so proud of the Lakeview Community Partnership, what they've been able to accomplish in a really short amount of time. It may feel like when we get going with this that it's like hurry up and wait kind of thing, because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that has to happen to build the organizational structure, to do some education and training with the committees, to set goals and objectives, develop mission statements, all of that sort of stuff. So for people that are like, I just want to do something, this part of the process isn't as fun or as sexy, but it's essential to build that base. And I'm just really proud of what the group has done to get them this far. And even at that same time, they've been able to do a few highly visible projects that are beginning to, I think, turn the tide in terms of community pride and awareness of the importance of downtown. I think the historic photos project that you did last year was really cool. You have an amazing collection of historic photos that really shows and documents the history and heritage of your town, and that's really a great resource to have, especially as we move forward with working with your community, because what we look for a lot with Main Street, knowing that the history and heritage of the community is an important part of your economic development strategy, is cultural and heritage tourism is a big draw, not to mention making things great for your own community members. So really looking at that history and heritage and bringing back that original character is important. So having that historic photo resource to be able to see what some of that original character and how to bring back some of that character is really a great tool to have. Through our offices, we provide technical assistance, as I mentioned. We don't charge for any of our services. We're part of state government. We're in heritage programs, which is part of Oregon Parks and Rec. And so when we come out and work with your community, or a number of the assistance that we do it because we want to help you. We want to give you the tools that you need to make the changes that you want to as a community. We never come in and tell a community what they have to do, but we do provide some recommendations based upon what we hear that you want to achieve. And we draw from our experience in working with communities across our state. And for me, I worked with the National Main Street Center, so I draw on what I've seen work in communities across the country as well. I worked a lot in the Midwest, and the Midwest and the farm towns there are a lot like Eastern Oregon, so we can, have a lot of comparisons that way as well. So we have helped provide a lot of organizational assistance. We're kind of moving into the next level in terms of providing some design assistance as well for your communities. Some of the things that we're able to do is some facade drawings, so if you want to bring back the historic character, and some of that has been lost, and we have a good photo documentation, we can provide some of that design assistance to bring back that historic character. One thing that's really important, since you're all by and large property owners in the room, is the legislature last year passed a $2.5 million Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant Program. The purpose of those funds are to go for building improvement projects to help spur economic development activities in communities. At least 50% of those funds have to be used in rural Oregon. So that's you all. And again, that's at least 50% have to go. And we're just getting into the rules making process. The grant for that will open around this time next year. That gives time for you all to think about your buildings and whether or not there's some projects that you want to move forward with doing to work on those buildings. This grant program, unlike some of our other grant programs that Joy will be talking about, is a little bit unusual for us in the sense that it doesn't have to be just exterior design work. It can be interior remodel to make the space more usable for new businesses to come in, because we're hoping that it sparks new business development and new job creation. It could also be if you have a multi-story building and you want to do an elevator that could perhaps be shared by buildings to make upper floors more usable. It could be used for that. It could be used for seismic reinforcement. It could be used for maintenance. It's going to have the possibility of funding a lot more things than we've been able to fund in the past. It's going to be a larger amount of grants than our other pools. We don't know yet how much, because we're going through the rules and then deciding the grant program itself. We're thinking right now around 100,000, but that may change. But for us, that's significant, because one of the programs Joy will talk about, that's all we have for all of the grants. And so this $2.5 million is kind of more than all of our grant programs total right now for us. So it really is a great new tool. And we know from our work in our other grant programs, especially in small towns, if we give a little bit of money, that can spur some really great transformation and changes in communities to bring back some of their historic characters or some other types of projects that we fund. So that's going to be a great new tool that we have available. Again, we don't know the parameters too much right now until we get through. We need to make sure that through the rules we're following what the legislative intent was of that particular grant program. But stay tuned, we'll have more. And again, we're have hopefully the grant applications available next year at this time. Again, it's going to be funded through the sale of lottery bonds in spring next year. So we want to get through the grant review process, so as soon as those dollars are available, we can grant them and enable you to move forward with your project without lag time. We do know through the way the legislation was written that you'll have 3 years to complete your project, and if you don't, then the funds will go back into our account. So that's a little bit about that particular program. Yes?
So you don't have to be a nonprofit, you can be a for-profit business?
You can be a for-profit to enable you to use the grant. However, you'll have to work with the Lakeview Community Partnership, because they will be the applicant on it and they will be the recipient of the grant and give it to you. So you'll need to work with the organization. At least that's the way it appears from the legislation. We thought we might be able to give it directly to property owners, but it doesn't appear that way. Once we get through the rules, we'll know that for sure who can be the applicant, but it definitely will go towards private sector, and that is the intent of this, is to go towards the private sector projects to spur economic development, bringing those buildings back into economic use or helping businesses that are there be more successful. Some of the other types of assistance we help with, like I said, the strategic planning, community development, brainstorming, sharing our ideas. We have listservs. We do quarterly network meetings and trainings as well. Ginger will be representing you. We were one of 5 states selected by the National Main Street Center and Project for Public Spaces to host a 2-day placemaking workshop. And so Ginger's going to be able to attend that. We had to limit it to 35 participants, but we wanted to make sure that if somebody from Lakeview was able to attend, that we saved a spot for you. And coincidentally, Ginger is going to be in that area. It's going to be in Hillsborough coming up at the end of this month. And we're hoping to have some small grants through some of our partners to enable you to do a placemaking project as a result of that. We also do annual awards and recognize good revitalization activities. And that's a little bit about Oregon Main Street. So I'll pass it over to Joy. She'll tell you. Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could throw out a couple of names of towns in Washington and Oregon that have done, are working on Oregon Main Street, because we all travel around, and it's kind of nice to look at some of those changes.
Sure.
What was your town? I can't remember.
I was in Port Townsend.
Port Townsend, that's right,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah, and it's the longest running program in the state of Washington. It started in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, over 30 years old now. Oh, that's beginning to date me. And I will tell you, if you see the town now, it looks nothing like how it started. I mean, like you, it had great building stock. A lot of the buildings were built in the Victorian era, and really some pretty spectacular buildings, but it was a diamond in the rough. It was a community that was built on speculation. They thought that they were going to be in Seattle before there was a Seattle, and the railroad never came. So those wonderful buildings that were built had never been finished off. The upper floors, and all of them, with the exception of 1 or 2 buildings, were vacant. And now they're all filled. At the time that I left, I was there for 8 years. We actually had a waiting list of businesses that wanted to locate in our town, so we were being able to be a little bit choosy.
Well, Cape Harbor has that same thing. They have the same thing in Washington, and they have waiting lists now for businesses on their Harbor Street.
Yeah.
So it does work. It takes time though.
Yeah. I'm really
Thank
proud of what our network here in Oregon. We're a relatively young state program. We started by the legislature in 2007 and took on our first towns beginning in 2008. I started with the program in 2009. And so I've been here for the majority of our regrowth, our rebirth, so to speak. But in that amount of time, we have had amazing accomplishments. We restarted at the beginning of the economic downturn. In our just top 2 tiers, we began collecting data from them in 2010, and we've had over 300 net new businesses open in just our top 2 tiers, so that's about 24 towns that we were collecting data from. We've had close to 2,000 net new jobs, and some of those really small towns like Dayton, they've had like 6 new businesses open, and it's a town of a population of 2,000, 2,500. Don't want to short those 500. But it's amazing whenever you see that many businesses open in a really small town, what an impact that is. It's a drop in the bucket in Portland, but in small towns, it can have a tremendous impact on the economy. And so Dayton would be an example here in Oregon of a town that has frankly exceeded all of my expectations in terms of the timeline that they've been on. In 6 years, essentially, they have transformed their downtown district. We did a design assistance that I mentioned that we'll be able to offer some of that for you, for them. And 7 of the 8 buildings that we did facade drawings have actually happened already. They had 1 brand new infill construction happen in their downtown last year. And it created some upper floor apartments that were rented out before they were even completed. They had a brand new mercantile open up. I was there in mid-January, and it was packed. It's just a little teeny little town in Yale County. It's pretty phenomenal. They've done they started 2 years ago, this will be their 3rd year, Dayton Friday night. So every Friday night from Memorial Day to Labor Day in their downtown, they have a little informal street fair, vintage cars, some music in the park, and the restaurants are all open. In this little town of 2,500, they've been averaging 300 people in the downtown. They know that they have 129 of those that have been in the businesses. And so in a small town, to bring in 125 customers consistently over that long of a time period is really amazing. And so that would be an answer to your question here in Oregon. For a small town, it's really amazing. But we have so many success stories now. I told somebody a couple of years ago, when I first started, I felt like Oregon's made music man, you know, running around selling the vision of what Main Street could be, and everybody had to kind of like buy into the vision. Now I can actually talk about successes, and so that's what has been a huge turning point. Where I've seen this happen in my career nationally in Washington, but I didn't have Oregon stats, but now I do. So that's a good point. But I know you probably want to hear more about our grant programs and about some of the other things that we offer as well. Do you want to mention those to us?
Yeah. So I work for the State Historic Preservation Office. We're part of heritage programs as under State Parks and Recreation. And our main goal is about the preservation of the heritage of the state. For the most part, for me, that means talking to property owners about old buildings. I grew up thinking everybody worked on old buildings and everybody fixed things. I didn't realize that I was silly and naive, but it created what I turned into a historic preservation career, helping owners with old buildings and talking about our programs and what is available. And so one of the things that happened in Oregon in the past was, and I'm not an Oregonian by native, but moved here, is the Planning Initiative Goal 5, which one of those mandates which was unfunded was for local jurisdictions to protect their historic properties in doing their redevelopment and doing projects. Well, because it was unfunded, most of that was done by volunteers, and they went around and just recorded various buildings, and it started our whole list of, usually that list has become the local landmarks list for local jurisdictions, which may or may not have the ordinance associated with it. And the one thing, so that created a list in the 70s and 80s. We have stuff recorded all over the state. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff hasn't been updated since the 70s or 80s. And just walking around, there's so much potential here. I don't really know all of what you have here. And so one of the things we're doing in a couple of weeks is folks from our office, we're just starting with Klamath Falls. We're going to be doing a reconnaissance level survey. Well, I call it a windshield survey. And no, I'm not running out and plastering cars with billboards or bills or anything. Basically, it's a walking around and recording of getting a feel for the downtown or a historic district or your core of your historic buildings. You've got some great bones here. It gives us a better idea of what we're dealing with, what kind of options we can offer, and going forward, how we can grow on our programs. So that's one of the things we're doing in Klamath Falls here in a couple of weeks, and we'll definitely, after walking around, we're definitely going to add Lakeview to our summer staff list. We get a couple students every year who come in and supplement our staff and our extra projects that we're doing. It's just walking around on the sidewalk and recording and taking pictures. It's all very, just trying to get a feel for for us to be able to understand. I've learned from John a lot of history today about what has happened downtown, about the local bricks that were made, and It also tells me a lot about a lot of your buildings, the fire that happened, which of course happens in every single community. Unfortunately, make the wood buildings go away. So that's something we'll be looking at doing here in the future, maybe this summer, I don't know, but hopefully soon. And probably the biggest thing is we just opened up our grants program. We have Oregon legislature, as part of our lottery funds that we're giving out, gives $250,000 every biennium to the State Historic Preservation Office to give out to historic properties to do restoration and preservation type activities. Well, an offshoot of that, in cooperation with the Cultural Trust, we've been able to go farther than that because that made a very small list. Preserving Oregon grant projects, that's dollar for dollar matching grant for buildings on the National Register. So buildings on the National Register like the Post and King building, the Hereford building that John owns. You know, you have a very small handful right here, but there's great potential here in the future. So one of the things we wanted to have in the past was a grant program that was available to a broader pool of participants. And we call it the Diamonds in the Rough grant. It's a dollar per dollar matching grant, up to $20,000. And we're really looking at, you know, lots of dramatic before and afters. We understand buildings get used. I don't think these are museums. If we use them and they're still around, we're gonna use them. They might change uses, that's just a given. And tastes change, colors, patterns, textures, everything. You know, we understand that all those things happen. But, you know, you've got some good bones on some of these buildings, and, you know, the opportunity to what I call crowbar restoration, kind of take off some of the old stuff to expose the old stuff underneath, like some of the bricks in this area. You've got a great collection of brick structures that have been covered over, transoms that have been covered over. You know, electricity was cheap, so, oh, we don't need transoms, you know, the little lights letting light in. Oh, we'll just make the windows smaller and electricity's cheap. Well, that's all well and good, but you know, it really starts taking away from those buildings. So we set up the Diamonds in the Rough grant. It's available for property owners for buildings that have usually been heavily altered. Either they've been covered up with modern materials and we can expose what's underneath, especially it's great when we know what's underneath. Transom windows, you know, brick, you know, being able to go back to those types of things. But it's a dollar per dollar matching grant. There's lots of structures. We identified a number of them walking around here this afternoon. That would be great candidates for that. And the grant application is online. It's called the Diamonds in the Rough grant through our office. And the grant deadline is going to be May 13th this year for funds to go out this summer and then be spent within the year.
I should mention too that the dollar for dollar match, the local match, doesn't have to be cash. It can be in kind, sweat equity on your property. So you can match our cash with your own labor or volunteer labor or something like that.
Yeah, we definitely
so we're a little bit.
We like some cash.
Some cash is always nice, so you have a little skin in the game, so to speak. But that can make it. But and I should. Mention as well that the application isn't that difficult. It's actually a pretty easy application, and U.S. property owners can apply directly or the community partnership might help you with that application. They'll put you guys on the spot there, but it truly isn't that difficult.
And we've identified some ones that will be
would be likely based
yes.
upon how we know that the review process has gone in the past. Would be likely candidates. Again, we're looking for that wow, kind of like, here was a historic building, at some time, you know, we made some improvements to it, which kind of took away the historic character, but it was kind of what we did at, you know, in the 60s and 70s and things like that. But now if you're interested in bringing back that historic character, that's what the Diamonds in the Rough are. And it could help you make your building more eligible in the event, in the future, you ever wanted to list it on the National Register or anything like that. It's not a requirement of that program, but it does help you get it back into shape to be able to apply that for that in the future. Ginger, you have a question?
Yeah, and so you do not have to be a nonprofit to apply for Diamonds in the
No,
Rough.
it is open to everyone.
The private property owner can apply for that particular one.
One of the things with our Preserving Oregon grant that's been an issue is that it's advantageous for us to have it open more to the public and nonprofit sector because they don't qualify for our property tax or our income tax credits available for historic buildings. So it's kind of an offshoot, also, it's $250,000 per biennium, so we kind of split it in half for give out grants every year. And of course, we get way more requests for projects than we can ever fund. Usually it's triple, quadruple the amount. And we get so many great projects sometimes that it's a very hard process to narrow it down to a few recipients. So hence the creation of the Diamonds in the Rough grant. We've done some projects. We did a project in downtown Burns on the Masonic Hall. Local family moved back and they are fixing up the upstairs for their, actually I think they're moved in. They're living upstairs in the old Masonic Hall and the wife is an optometrist and she's opened up her optometry shop in the first floor and then they've got another little retail shop. They redid the storefront. We had lost the historic storefront, unfortunately, things changed. Somebody in the 80s came in and did this false front, funky, a Wild West thing where they made a little balcony. It was really tall first floors, and so they had kind of put in these vinyl windows and made it real small and put this big balcony on top, which was only ornamental, and went and redid all of that, and now it has nice storefront windows, nice storefront doors, has transoms again, letting in light, and they're really happy with what they've done. So we've done some projects. We did one in Newburgh, which was a pretty simple project, one of the crowbar restorations. We took off a bunch of sheet metal off of it was a nice row of commercial buildings, and had this one little sore thumb kind of in the middle. And you wouldn't know it by looking at it. You're like, it looks like a 1960s building maybe. And we said, well, what's underneath that metal? What's underneath that metal? And we see all the historic pictures. Lots of historic pictures here. These are the things I love to be able to use for references. Well, we got them to take one channel off and look and see what was underneath. Well, underneath was this cast stone great building, and the transoms were still there. They'd just taken out the storefront and modernized it over time. It had just sheet metal covered over the top. Got all of that removed, took off all the horrible industrial green paint somebody had decided was a modern thing to do. And he cleaned it all up, and it looks great. Now that whole street front there looks great. The historic buildings, they're all very well maintained and everything. So we trying to look for a wow factor, and we're available for assistance to help and talk through things to get the best project possible.
Bottom line, when we're trying to encourage some of those historic improvements, your community members know the building, they know the businesses. But if you're trying to capture some of that through traffic and get them to stop and wander around and spend some of those outside dollars in your community, then making some of these changes really kind of perks their interest and gets them interested in your community, gets them interested in the history of your community, and hopefully helps your businesses be more successful by generating some customers for them too.
Heritage tourism in the United States and Oregon in particular is a multi-million-dollar industry. That you've got some great buildings here. Let's build on those and create more of a downtown community feel. Celebrate your heritage, and you're building on all of those things you already have. just shining up some of the non-nice things or the ugly buildings maybe. Maybe it's as simple as paint and awning or something. It can be simple like that. Do you want to talk about the cultural trust, or, I'm sorry, not the travel organ?
We've heard that, okay, there's a couple of other grant programs out there. The Cultural Trust also has a grant program that can go for historic preservation bricks and mortar projects. I sat on the review panel last year for the first time and discovered that a lot of the other panelists had a preference to fund bricks and mortar kinds of historic preservation kind of projects. So that's another pool of grants that are out there through the Oregon Cultural Trust. Travel Oregon has just received some additional funds, and they're creating a new grant program too, so stay tuned to be aware of that. So some of those things, just wanted to summarize a little bit. So right now, we have the two that are open through our office, Heritage Programs, the Preserving Oregon, for buildings that are listed currently on the National Register. We have the Diamonds in the Rough, that's to bring back the historic character if you've lost some of that historic character. Next year, we'll have the Oregon Main Street Revitalization Grant Program for those larger ticket projects. And then we can do the reconnaissance level historic survey for you this summer, just as an education piece, just so that you know what the potential is in the future if you wanted to explore what being a historic district was. It's not, it's nothing more than giving you some information and education about what the potential is for your community. So we can offer to do that service for you because you're participating in our network right now.
Doesn't cost you folks anything?
Doesn't cost you.
We're already paid for.
Yeah, we're already paid for. We do have some of that limited design assistance that we can offer this spring too. If you have a historic building and you want to know, be able to visualize bringing back the historic character, we'll be able to do some facade drawings for a couple of buildings along that, so if you're interested in that. So that's kind of a range as property owners of some of the things that we're able to offer right now and in the future.
One of the things we're also doing with Klamath Falls right now is they're looking to become a certified local government program, which basically means that they want to be a heritage community that cooperates with our office. And 10% of our federal funds that are given out to our office, which is based on population, is given out to these certified local governments to do preservation, education. It can be bricks and mortar grants, it can be walking tours, it can be interpretive plaques, it can be a large volume of different things that can fall under that category. And one of those first things that we're doing with Klamath Falls is doing a reconnaissance level survey in a couple of weeks, doing that and helping them become a certified local government. Basically, the requirements for that are pretty basic. We just want to know you've got historic buildings, you're going to create an ordinance or redo the existing historic ordinance, and that you have cooperation with the city. Because they're normally a cooperative member of this certified local government program. You have a planner, which you probably is already doing some historical stuff. All those types of things can count in for some of that funding. And maybe in the future, once we know what you've got and we have some more meetings and everything, we can talk about doing a historic district or doing tours or any variety of a number of different things that can build on what you already have here, and just identifying it and working with our programs to bring that to fruition, to a bigger. It's a long process, but there's lots of things that we have on our plate that we can hopefully help to make Lakeview even greater and build on its history. Our office is always here for advisory. We've been working with Klamath Falls for a long time. They didn't like our office so much in the past for a number of reasons way over and beyond my control. But we really want folks to know that even though we're housed in Salem, that we are here for the entire state. We want to help with the heritage and the building stock and build on your history as best as possible. You know, we have the programs, we can tell you about them, you know, and we can give you the options. You can look at them and see if it's something you want to take advantage of. We don't wrestle anybody. we can encourage, but we can't make you do anything. If folks want to do something, we'll definitely, you know, see what our options are to be able to help it go forward.
There's a couple of other programs that Joy manages, the special assessment program.
So for properties on the National Register of Historic Places, like the Post and King building, there's two preservation tax incentive programs that are available. At the state level is the state property tax program. We call it special assessment. And basically it's a property tax program in which a property, you know, usually that's vacant or underutilized, has a really low assessed value, and it gives a property owner 10 years to have improvements done that are part of a preservation plan that they don't have automatically added to their assessed value. So it gives a little bit of a property tax break for 10 years. There is a spending threshold and items like that. I'm happy to provide information on that. And the bigger one that the Post and King building took advantage of was the historic tax credit for income producing historic properties listed on the National Register. You know, to what I understand is a vacant and probably not habitable building, and now is your Washington Federal Bank. It was an interesting project. I hadn't done any drive-through projects in the past, but basically 20% of their qualified funds that were spent on the building were taken as a federal income tax credit off of whoever the participant was who was the owner of the building. So
That's a credit, not a deduction.
Credit, not a deduction, yes. So, you know, there's opportunities out there, and we definitely will be, you know, bringing those to you folks here in the future in greater detail as we start working with you all.
If you formed a historic district, what become the rules that you have to abide by being a historical district?
You folks are going to create the rules of what your guidelines are going to be. We have model ordinances that we give as guidelines, as basis for talking about it. But in the end, it's your, you know, your area.
So it's not state mandated, it's
No, it is not state mandated.
And with the National Register District, a lot of times communities do that because of the marketing value for the heritage tourism. But it really is an honorary thing unless you choose to, you know, put some rules and regulations. Or if the property owner that was in a contributing building within the historic district, if you wanted to make changes to your building and you wanted to take that tax credit, that federal tax credit, that's when some federal standards would kick into place. They're called the Secretary of Interior standards. And there's just some guidelines on building rehab, some things that you would probably want to do anyways to maintain the historic character of your building. So that's the only way really that, you know,
The federal government doesn't tell you what you can do with your building.
yeah, there's a lot of misperception around that.
You know, that would be my
I
concern if all of a sudden you get this money now and it's
there's
like, you
none.
can't do this, you
Nope.
can't do that, and now you
Nope.
can't sell it.
All the rules would be anything on the local level. I tell people, people think I'm the paint police a lot, and I go, no, I'm not the paint police. You can paint your building pink and purple, and that's your choice. You're probably not going to have very good feedback from your neighbors, and you're probably going to get tired of it real quick. But as long as you're maintaining your building, I'm not going to tell you what color to paint it. If you want suggestions or paint color palettes or some, you know, some period appropriate for the building type color things, I'm happy to provide those types of suggestions. But I'm really just looking at the overall maintenance and getting the building occupied and being able to use it in the future.
How does the Disabilities Act work with the historical preservation or restoration?
That's very interesting because it really depends on the building. I'd just say, case in point, the Indian Village, we had lunch there. You know, there's a step up to the doors. Well, those are on the public sidewalk. I don't know if there's an option to create an ADA at-level option. You know, you can't put a ramp on a public sidewalk or anything. You can't impede on those public improvements. You know, we try and make changes that aren't compromising the historic character. Sometimes there's not ways to get around it. I was dealing with a bar lounge in downtown Union, and it had a similar situation. It said that this was a wood building, not as big, but it had a step up to both the side door and the front door. Well, there's nowhere to put a ramp. They have an ADA accessible bathroom inside, but there is no way for a ramp. And when talking with the building inspector, that was one of the cases where that's a National Register Historic District, and we were able to write a variance because there wouldn't be a building there if we tried to build a ramp.
Sure.
You'd have a ADA ramp and a toilet, and that wouldn't be a business.
So what do? You just put a sign that says we will assist people who need to?
Well, we gave it a variance for the ramp. And then, yeah, we try and make alternative arrangements however we can to make sure that everybody's served. But even downtown Jacksonville has a lot of step up into, you know, into those doorways. And we try to look for options. You know, we hate to bring people always in the back of the building. Sometimes that's the only option. We try and come up with an option, but it's not always possible without really, you know, taking out the building or taking away all the things that have made it historic and really that character. So it's a complicated, but most of the time we can get to something that's agreeable for everybody.
Do you have any clout with the postal department? Our post office needs to face something terrible.
It's a little pain, isn't it? We walked by that today. Ginger, you have your answer.
Do you want to talk about that?
I didn't hear what she said.
The postal department, we are
Oh,
working
yeah,
on it. We're
yeah.
working with the postmistress.
Yes.
And we're gonna be doing, I think, a letter writing campaign. Why don't you
Well,
talk
we're
about
sure
that?
we're gonna do a letter writing campaign. I'm working with Jennifer Conley, the postmaster, or Cooney, I'm sorry, Jennifer Cooney. And she's giving us some guidelines of how it would be best for us to handle it for her. Because the Postal Service is not federal, but the federal government owns the building. And so they're the ones we're gonna go to have it painted and the grass fixed and everything. So I'm in the process. Good point that when Senator Merkley was here, I talked to him about it, and he was really, first of all, very happy about what we're doing. And he says, just send all three congressmen a scope of work and a budget, you know, bid, and we'll see what we can do. So that's what we're doing. So I'm trying to find painters. Good luck. But anyway, we're working on that. And
Grassroots.
it's not gonna be any cost to the town. So if there's any questions, ask Jennifer or myself.
John, you got any plans for your building?
Which one?
Your big one?
Well, coming out of the legislature next year, she said there's hopefully going to be some money that can be spent inside. One of the greatest assets for me at this point would be an elevator.
Right.
So that's the primary thing. Our paint job lasted from, well, I was up in the bucket truck painting it when the planes hit the Twin Towers in New York. So we've got 15 years on that paint job. We'll probably be up there this summer redoing it. Again, the work isn't going to be near as bad as what it was when I painted it last time. Those two things are on. Currently, where the drugstore was, Howard's Drug, we were taking old paneling that was put up in the early 60s. We're taking that off the walls and restoring the inside to look exactly like the old plaster, getting ready to paint, and put some new light fixtures in, taking out the older energy inefficient fluorescents, and redoing that space. Probably talking out of turn here a little bit, but we're also working with the creamery over in Klamath Falls. I've arranged to have their selection of beers. We're investigating the concept of putting a tap room in the old Elks Bar on the first floor across from Plush West. It'll be called the Hereford Tap Room, carrying their 5 really nice beers. We've worked out an arrangement with a distributor in the Ashland area to have some of the Ashland wine in kegs. So we're trying to get away from the bottles and the recycling side of this with the taps and kegs. Featuring a little more upscale bar than what we've had. The happiest days of my life were when I opened up other saloons, and the next happiest day was when I closed. So here we go again, looking at doing this again. Well, I don't know, but this is one of the things that came up with our survey. People really like the idea of having a brewery here, and in talking with another old-time Lakeview fellow, Lee Matchett, I was mentioning a brewery, and he said, well, John, you don't have to have a brewery to have good beer. So, yeah, no one's gonna open a brewery in Lakeview without a lot more, investment documentation, but those folks make some great beer.
Oak Ridge had one.
And they did a great job. I love their beer.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Terminal Brand.
That's what we're thinking about at this point. Getting the elevator will give us the second floor option again. And I've had, over the years, I can't tell you how many people that have said, John, if you could go on that 3rd floor and make some really nice apartments, little condo units up there, I'll take the first one. So that's, given our elevator, we can do that, Chuck.
I've always thought that the 2 museums should be together with one curator. Your 2nd floor would be just a beautiful place for the museum.
Wouldn't it? I'm ready to make that happen if the museum committee would like to do that. We've talked about, today at lunch, we were talking about the availability of a private landowner like myself doing a long-term lease to a nonprofit like the museum, or even you can do a condominium sale. As far as that goes, it would allow them to access the funding necessary to do that.
And the Historical Society, get them involved, because they do have quite a bit of money to
Good idea, thank you.
What about the round?
There's a couple of people looking at it. One group's thinking about another tavern. Taverns are tough. Why am I doing this? I don't have any real plans on it. We've got an issue with a back wall here when a previous owner cut quite a bit of the roof overhang off that caused the water to stay away from the foundation. And then the town went in and paved. We really like that, but the issue is that water has been soaking in the edges of the buildings now, running through. And I've got a pretty bad cracked wall back there that has to be replaced this year. Roofing, a lot of us people that own flat roofed buildings like Mike down here at the end, we're always fighting roofing issues. That's one of the beautiful things about this grant program coming out next year is Possibly some of these monies can be used to do the long-term repairs that building owners haven't been able to do over time.
And theoretically too, you could have a whole block of buildings that come in on a joint application, with multiple sites wanted to do something, so, we'll be looking at that kind of an option as well for that particular grant program. Well, say in walking around, although there are some, a few maintenance issues or some things, by and large, to be honest, most of your buildings are in pretty good shape compared to some districts that I've been in at this point of a revitalization effort. So kudos to you as building owners for taking such good care of your buildings. Not as many issues as we normally see. And I know the care and feeding of old buildings is an ongoing challenge for you. Did you all get the information that you needed from us? Any questions that you have about any of our programs or any of our opportunities? Gathering some cards. I have a couple. I do have some cards. So our grant programs you can find on our website, OregonHeritage.org. It's easy to find. Our grants person, Kurt Gill, is always willing to talk to you through the grant process, how to apply, talk to you about your project to make it more competitive. She loves it when people call her in advance so that she can really help you do a good project, and she does a great job with that. So I encourage you, if you're thinking about the Diamonds in the Rough grant program, to give her a call about that. And again, we're just here to help you do whatever it is that you want to do to help restore and revitalize your downtown. So we thank you all for being here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. Ginger.
We have some bottled water and some goodies back here if you want to visit and hang out for a little bit.